Hi, welcome to this high-level presentation that'll be covering Tivoli Storage Manager Operations Center. Today I'll be covering what the Operations Center is, and then I'll go into each of the subtasks that make up the Operations Center. The Operations Center was introduced in Tivoli Storage Manager 6.3.4, and it is a web application that gives Tivoli Storage Manager administrators a visual dialogue of what's happening in the Tivoli Storage Manager environment. The Operations Center has a lot of integrated wizards which expedite the execution of a lot of common tasks. It has a lot of visual dialogues that give administrators immediate feedback on what's happening in the Tivoli Storage Manager server environment. And it can operate in a hub and spoke model where it's monitoring multiple Tivoli Storage Manager servers all from one location. This video is just a presentation of the Operations Center. There are other videos out on YouTube which cover actual demos of the Operations Center. And if you want to play with the Operations Center yourself, you can go out to this live demo here and try it out and kick the tires in a live environment. The first thing an administrator sees when they log on is this morning cup of coffee overview. This is an overview of the entire Tivoli Storage Manager environment. It covers the machines that are being backed up, as you'll see here under the clients, and this includes both our applications, which would be your database and mail servers, as well as your virtual machines and different system machines like workstations and servers. On the right-hand side, we have the TSM servers, which would include all of your hub and spoke servers. So in this case, we're monitoring 3 servers. And you can see the status of the database space, the archive logs, as well as the storage pools. In the middle here, we have the alert status, and I'll talk more about alerts in a minute. We talk about the services of what's actually happening in this environment. Is it backup and restore, archive and retrieve, migrate and recall, and which policies are associated with that. And at the bottom here, we have the activity that's occurred over the last 24 hours. And you can actually customize this by clicking on the traffic, and that will then give you traffic specific just to application clients or virtual machine clients or system clients. So then you can see what your network's been busy with and who's been pushing the data across. With the TSM clients, some of the visual information that's important is this concept of being at risk or not at risk. If a client is at risk, it means it has not been successfully backed up in a certain period of time. By default, that certain period of time is 24 hours, but you can set that to a different length. And so here you can see the application servers have all been successfully backed up, whereas with the virtual machines, we have 1 virtual machine which is at risk, and we have 11 system machines which are at risk as well. So they have not had a successful backup in a certain period of time. Let's start off by taking a look at these alerts and what those alerts mean. So to access the detailed alert information, you'd either click on the alert icon or go into the Overviews Alert section on the headers. What an alert is we take a look at the activity log on the TSM servers that we're monitoring, and we look for error messages or informational messages or warnings that match the error messages, warnings, or information messages that we want to be alerted on. And I'll show you in a second how that's set up. And then if there is a match, then an alert is generated. Now alerts are nice because they are lifecycle managed. So as alerts roll off and don't reoccur, then you'll no longer see them color coded out here. As alerts become more critical, you'll see them turn up in red at the top here, or as you can see here, we have our critical status on the left-hand side. Now you can drill down into these alerts and actually see where they occurred in the activity log. We'll bring up messages from the activity log so you can see what was happening before or after that message occurred. In order to configure the alerts, you simply click on this configure button, and then you can choose which messages you want to alert on. Now with the lifecycle of the alerts, it goes through an active, inactive, and closed status. The way that the statuses are calculated depends upon the frequency of the alerts and if they had been closed specifically by a TSM administrator. Now the alerts can be assigned to an administrator so that if they do occur, a message will be sent out to a specific administrator saying this error has occurred on this server, and then that administrator will have the opportunity to go into the operations center, and once they've fixed the problem, to set the alert as inactive. Now, if you do want to turn on this alert emailing, you do have to set it up inside of the operations center and turn on some of the alert functions on the TSM server with these set alert emails on. Okay, so what we just looked at was alerts. Now let's turn and look at the clients. Remember, there's three categories of clients. We have our application, our virtual machines, and our system machine. When you drill down into the client section, you'll see the name of the clients. You'll see if they're at risk, meaning for some reason a schedule was missed or they hadn't been backed up in a specific amount of time. You'll see which TSM server they belong to, if you're monitoring more than one TSM server. And then you can also see information, for instance, if they actually are participating in node replication, what the next schedule is that will kick off, at what time that schedule is. The nice thing about these different views is you can click on these categories here, and if you left click, you can then select to have specific columns show up or specific columns be hidden. And the Operations Center will remember what you choose to show or hide, so next time you log on, you'll get the same view. If your TSM clients are participating in replication, you will see if they are the primary client, and if so, where the copy of that client is. In this case, it belongs to the server Fusion, and we can see that Fusion is sending it over to the peer server called Eon. Down here we see the same client name, but this case we're looking at the Eon server, and we can see that it's in a receive state and that the owner of that is actually Fusion. So this is how node replication shows up in the Operations Center. This viewpoint was added in version 7.1.0 servers, so if you're at a server level below that, you'll simply see this as unreported. If you want to get specific information about a client, there's a couple different views you can go into. For a quick look about some general information, you simply select a client, as you can see here in blue, and then click on Quick Look, and that will give you general information about that client. If you want to update the at-risk category for that client, you select the client, go into the Set At Risk, and now you can choose things to do the default at risk. You can select to bypass it altogether. For instance, this client is no longer being backed up, it's been mothballed, but you want to keep the information out there. So you would just say bypass it, don't even report on it. Or you could choose to customize the at-risk status so that, for instance, if that client hadn't been backed up in 12 hours, it would report at risk. If you want to add a new client in, you can do that by clicking on the plus client screen, and then you can go through and select which server it should be added into. You can specify the client name, the passwords, and so forth. And this will go ahead and create the client node in the TSM server, and therefore also in the Operations Center. However, this does not push out the client code, nor does it configure the actual TSM client. If a client had missed a backup schedule for some reason, and you want to kick off that backup on demand, you can go in and click on the client and then click the backup button, and that will start the most recent schedule again for that specific client. If you want to get details about the client, you can click the detail button, and that will give you a couple options. The first being a summary, where we can see the activity of that client over the last 24 hours. We can see the activity over the last 2 weeks on how much data was backed up. We can see, for instance, who the client belongs to and what that email is and what the IP address is. We can also then drill down into the properties of that client. And in this properties piece, you can actually make changes to some of the data. And I listed on the right-hand side here what you currently can change. We also talk about the file spaces and client access. And most interestingly, we can do this diagnosis piece. And this diagnosis piece is done through what we call our client management services. Client management services is a small piece of code we install on the physical server that we want to look at. And this allows us to collect the DSM error logs and the DSM schedule logs and pass them up to the Operations Center. So once you've installed this small piece of code on the TSM client, you'll then be able to gather this information into the Operations Center. This Operations Center client diagnosis will actually go out and look at the errors and kind of give you recommendations on how to fix those errors. This gives some specifics about the client management service, including the install steps, which is a very rapid install, about 5 minutes. You can either do that as a GUI install or as a silent install. And this is currently supported on Windows and Linux machines. Another client option is to look at and create client schedules. You can go into the scheduler here. You can see which clients are associated with that specific schedule, when it's supposed to kick off, how often it repeats, which domain it belongs to, which server it's going to, and what type of service is it performing. Is it an incremental? Is it selective? Is it backing up a database? If you decide to create a new schedule, you simply click on the plus schedule icon, and you'll go through and you'll give information about the server this belongs to, the domain it goes into, what type of backup you're doing. And then depending on the type of backup, whether it's an application backup or if it's just an incremental backup, you'll give specific information regarding the type of commands you want to kick off. So this wizard just walks you through and simplifies the creation of client schedules. Once the wizard's done, it'll pop you into a screen where you can associate various clients with that specific schedule. You can also update an existing client schedule by going into the Client Schedule Detail tab, so you can change things like the start time or the start window. You'll also see this clock icon. This is a 24-hour clock, and it gives you specific information about when the schedule is meant to kick off, how long the schedule ran the last time, and if there is a specific end time associated with that schedule. And what this end time will do is if the client is still backing up when this end time, which is designated here by the red dot, occurs, then an alert will be sent to the alert log. If this is just a client schedule, then just an alert is sent out. However, if this is an administrative schedule doing things like migrations, then that command will actually be halted if it passes the runtime alert level. Okay, the next category is the services category, and if we drill down into the services, you'll see the different policy domains, which server they belong to. We can actually go and do a quick look on that, and that'll give you the general information about when it was activated and which clients are registered with that. If we want to take a look at the detailed information on service policies, you will get to see the 2-week history of the expiration. You'll see information on the clients associated with that and the number of schedules associated with that policy, as well as the retention grace periods. Now let's drill into the servers section. When you click on the server section, all of the TSM servers that are being monitored will show up. In this case right here, we just have one server being monitored. We call this our hub server. And if we choose to add spoke servers so that we can monitor other TSM servers, you can simply click on the plus connect spoke piece, and a wizard will pop up which will walk you through actually setting up a spoke server. You'll need, for instance, the spoke server name, the IP address, and some information about connecting to that spoke server. Now when you go to set up Operations Center, there is some sizing you need to do, because with the Operations Center we are collecting information about the spoke and the hub. The key to sizing really depends on the number of clients that are being backed up to each of the servers. And I do have a slide and a link to a sizing tool to help you with that. What this slide is talking about is the activity logs and how the spoke servers will pass to the hub server their activity information that is used for specific alerts. So that when we go out and we look at the alerts, we have that information ready to be processed and passed up to the Operations Center. The Operations Center is going to require extra resources that include database space, archive log space, and processor cores on the server that access your TSM hub. How much space really depends on the number of clients that are being monitored, as well as the number of clients that belong to the spoke servers that you're going to monitor. So you can go out to this online calculator here, and that will give you the general idea of the space requirements for Operations Center. A rough estimate is that you should probably have about a maximum of 20 spoke servers, or approximately 10,000 to 20,000 client nodes or virtual machine file spaces per hub. Now the hub is responsible for collecting the information from the spoke server so that it can feed it up to the Operations Center. This refresh of information occurs by default every 5 minutes. Now you can go out there and you can lower and raise this interval. If you lower it, then more data is going to be processed and maintained, so you're going to need more space in the TSM database and logs, as well as perhaps higher input-output operations per second on the disks where the TSM server database resides. Okay, let's take a look at some more information on the TSM servers that are monitored in the Operations Center. Here we are looking at the detailed overview of the servers. We see, for instance, the amount of primary data being stored in the TSM servers, as well as copy storage pools. We can see when the TSM server was last restarted, and if a database backup has occurred on that specific day over the last 2 weeks. You can also see the sessions that have occurred over the last 24 hours, so this helps to give you an idea of when your TSM server is the busiest, as well as when maintenance processes like backup databases and migration were running on the TSM server. You can also see down here the current inventory of your database activity log and archive logs. And now we're going to go in and look at some of the other server-specific information. These are the server alerts. So if you just want to see the alerts for one specific server, you can go in through the server panel, down into the detailed information, and then down into alerts to see just that server's alerts. If you want to actually edit some of the properties on the server, you can go into the server properties, and here you can change the items that I listed on the right-hand side. If you want to see which tasks are currently active on the server, you can go into the active task piece. And in here you can do things like cancel an active task if you want to. Here we're canceling that active task. Or if you want to see which tasks have completed, you can go to the completed task section. You'll see on the top here we have the task that completed, and then if you click on a specific task, you can get the activity log information around that task showing up in the bottom half of the screen. You can also choose to back up the TSM database directly from the server page. And then if you go into the server's maintenance piece, we can see which type of maintenance is scheduled to run inside of that specific TSM server. When we talk about maintenance schedule, we're not just talking about an admin schedule, we're talking about specific pieces that have to do with maintaining the TSM server, like migrations and expirations and things like that. So when we look at these commands, they may not all be part of an admin schedule. Some of them might have, for instance, been kicked off naturally by the TSM server, or they might be commands that an admin issued on demand, or there might be some type of external third-party scheduler that's kicking them off. Just like in the client schedules, you'll be able to see the clock that'll show the run times. You'll see when they were last started and when they last completed. If you want to see the steps that actually pertain to that particular schedule, you can simply expand the little twisty here, and that'll show you the steps that pertain to that specific item. Okay, let's move on to the storage pool section. If you click on the storage pool section, you will see the current storage pools that are out there. You'll see which server they belong to, what their capacity is. You can click on Quick Looks, that'll give you the quick look, or you can drill down and do a backup storage pool if you so choose. You can go in and look at the storage pool details. This will give you, for instance, the capacity used over the last 2 weeks, as well as who the next storage pool is if there is a hierarchy set up. And you can even go down here and click on volumes if you want to see which volumes are part of that storage pool. If you want to kick off reclamation for a storage pool, you can select that storage pool and then click on More, and then you will be able to actually issue a reclamation against that. Remember, reclamation is usually for tape storage pools. If you want to do a migrate, once again, you can choose a storage pool, you can click on the More, and then you can choose to migrate. And as long as there's a next pool set up, you'll be able to go ahead and kick off a manual on-demand migration. The final category here is storage devices. If you click into the storage devices category, you'll be able to see the different device classes that are present, which server they belong to, and what type of device those are. You can do a quick look on any of these to get general information about those devices. So we've walked through the different categories in the Operations Center. Depending upon the level of TSM administrator you are when you log on to them, you'll have permissions to do different types of operations inside the Operations Center. The chart that I got out of the help here to show you exactly what is allowed for each different administrator level. And you can also see, based upon the icons that show up when you're logged on up in the right-hand corner, what the level of TSM administrator is. We basically have system authority, which is able to do everything. We have policies who can manage backup and archive sessions. We have a storage administrator who can manage server storage. We can have the operator who manages alerts and client sessions. And we have node owners who can open a web interface for that specific client. Now, if a operation is denied to that level of administrator, it'll simply be grayed out. And then if you hover over that operation, it'll tell you why you can't perform. We spoke about some of the settings that can be set up in regards to how often information is refreshed, as well as the at-risk category. These can be altered by clicking on the globe and then clicking on settings. And from here you can do global settings. This will impact all of the TSM servers that you're monitoring. We do have the concept of a daily email report. If you want to send out an email to TSM administrators or to other people who may not be administrators but who have a vested interest in how the backup is doing, you can send out this daily email report. You set it up from inside of the Operations Center, and when this email arrives in your mailbox, you'll have two sections. The first section is this general overview, which gives you the executive summary, how many protected clients are out there, and then the status of the servers and storage associated with the hub and spokes that we're monitoring. You can then click on an attachment and it'll open up and give you specific information for each of those categories. It's very easy to set up this daily email report. You simply go into the settings category and choose daily reports, and from inside of there you can specify who it goes to, what time it kicks off, and which email server to utilize. We also have a concept of advanced filtering. In all of the drill down screens that you saw, there is a search capacity. And if you want your searches to be more refined, you can go to this advanced filter by clicking on the magnifying glass. And then you can actually set up different parameters to search on. And those parameters will depend upon the screen you're in. And then you can do and or operations against multiple parameters to be able to search for something very specific. Once you've issued an advanced filter, you'll see Advanced Filter On show up in the search category. And the specific categories that you searched on will show up kind of highlighted. They'll look as though the column's been depressed, so you'll see the column header is a little bit different color. And then to reset the filter, you can simply click on the reset. Well, some of these advanced searches are used rather regularly. And so in order to capture those, we can simply copy the URL that shows up when you create an advanced filter. And then we can go into the settings and the shared links, and you can save this advanced filter in the shared links. And now any of the TSM administrators who log into the Operations Center will be able to utilize that shared link. Now in the shared link, you could also specify external URLs that you might want to make other administrators aware of. We can have up to 10 entries in this global shared link category. And if you're a systems administrator, you can add, delete, or update the existing links. To access the links, you simply click on this little ribbon icon next to the global icon in the top right, and that will show you all of the links that are saved. You can also access the TSM Command Line from the Operations Center, also by going into the globe icon. With the command line, it does remember the last commands issued. You can also specify which TSM server that this command is supposed to be issued against. You can copy and paste information from this command line. So it's very easy to utilize if you do need to issue a command directly from the Operations Center. So the Operations Center is a very small, rapid to install piece of software. You need about 4 gigabytes of memory and 1 gigabyte of space in order to install it. It does work on AIX, Linux, Z-Series Linux, and Windows operating systems. It can monitor any of the TSM 634 and above servers. The Operations Center is basically a Liberty web server. It does utilize Java, and it does link in with the Customer Installable Knowledge Center, which also supports different levels of Firefox, Chrome, and Internet Explorer. The Operations Center is accessible via web browser. We support various levels of web browsers, everything from Apple Safari to Google Chrome to Microsoft Internet to Mozilla Firefox. This slide is taken from version 7.1.1, so the levels of supported operating centers and web browsers obviously changes depending upon the level of the Operations Center you're dealing with. Now, the Operations Center can work with any TSM Server 634 and above, and any level of TSM client. And the great thing about the Operations Center is it is so lightweight and it is so flexible when it comes to monitoring one or more TSM servers. Our TSM development team has been putting a lot of new functionality into each release for the Operations Center. So when I created this presentation, it was based upon the 7.1.1 level of the Operations Center. So as we put out new releases, I do try to create new YouTube videos showing the new functions and features for that specific level. The other YouTube videos that are out there also show actual live demonstrations on how to do things like install the Operations Center, or how to set up the executive email reports, or create a schedule. All of those have small, short YouTube demos out there, so do take a look at that. Thanks for your time.